There is a silence you carry within you, a quiet space where your own thoughts, untouched by the world, are meant to echo, but for a long time, perhaps for as long as you can remember. That space has not been your own, it has been furnished with the expectations of others. The approving nod of a parent, the admiration of a colleague, the perceived expectations of a society that never sleeps. You have built a life, a beautiful, intricate life, but you walk through its rooms like a guest, wondering when the true owner will arrive. This is not a story of rebellion, but of homecoming. It is the quiet, courageous journey of turning down the noise of the world, to finally hear the whisper of your own soul. It begins not with a choice, but with a survival instinct. A child's world is a universe designed by giants. Their voices are the weather, their moods the atmosphere. A smile from a parent is a sunrise, filling the landscape with warmth and safety. A frown, a sudden cold front, threatening and incomprehensible. In this delicate ecosystem, the child learns the first and most crucial equation. Certain behaviors bring light, others bring shadow. This is the foundation, the first brick laid in what will become a vast and intricate structure, the architecture of approval. The blueprint is drawn in the language of everyday moments, a gold star on a spelling test, the proud squeeze of a hand after a recital, the beaming face that says, "You have made me happy." These are not merely rewards, they are lessons in connection. The nervous system learns to map the pathways that lead to this warmth. It files away the data. When I achieve, I am loved. When I am quiet and good, I am safe. Conversely, a tantrum met with withdrawal, a creative mess met with frustration, a tear met with impatience. These are lessons in the cost of authenticity. The unspoken curriculum is clear. To be yourself is to risk the loss of the sun. So a smaller, more manageable self is presented, a self that knows which parts to show and which parts to hide. This education continues seamlessly into the schoolyard. Here the currency is popularity, belonging, the right shoes, the right words, the right laughter at the right time. The child, now a social architect, learns to build a persona that fits the ever-shifting landscape of peer acceptance. They study the blueprints of others, mimicking, adapting, camouflaging their oddities and enthusiasms. The unique shape of their own soul is gently sanded down to fit into a pre-cut slot. It is not a malicious process. It is a collective, unconscious dance where everyone is both the sculptor and the sculpture. Everyone trying to find the shape that hurts the least. The family system is the primary architect, but culture is the master planner. It dictates the grand, sweeping styles of a life deemed successful. Certain blueprints are handed down like heirlooms: the prestigious career, the early marriage, the 2.5 children, the ownership of property. These are not presented as options but as destinations. The path is already paved. To step off it feels less like a choice and more like a disappearance. The question, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" is rarely a philosophical inquiry into being. It is a practical question about doing, about having, about occupying a recognized and valued position in the social hierarchy. And so the structure grows, story by story, expectation by expectation, a room for parental hopes, a wing for societal benchmarks, a gallery for the admiring glances of strangers. The individual lives inside this constructed self, this beautiful, impressive museum of achievements and approvals. For a long time it feels like home. It is warm with the heat of external validation. It is bright with the light of meeting expectations. But a museum, no matter how grand, is not a home. It is a place one curates for visitors. A place where you cannot put your feet up on the furniture. A place where everything is for show and nothing is truly, messily your own. There is a quiet moment, often missed in the hustle of maintaining the facade. A person stands in their own life, surrounded by all the evidence of their success, and feels a peculiar, chilling draft. It comes from a crack in the foundation, a small, almost invisible fissure through which a question whispers, "Is this all there is?" The feeling is not one of sadness, but of profound dislocation. It is the feeling of a key turning in a lock, but realizing you are on the wrong side of the door. You have built the perfect life, according to a blueprint you never consciously chose, and in the center of it you stand, a ghost in your own machine, wondering when the real occupant will arrive. The architecture is complete. It is sturdy, familiar, and from the inside, it looks an awful lot like the world itself. The walls are painted in the colors of should and must. Windows offer views of a life that looks correct. For a long time, it feels secure. But then, a restlessness begins, a feeling of being confined, even though no door is locked, no bar is visible. This is the nature of the invisible cage. Its construction is not of iron, but of thought. Its design is not by a jailer, but by a self that learned long ago that the price of freedom was a love it could not afford to lose. The primary mechanism is conditioning. Like a skilled artisan, experience carves neural pathways with relentless precision. Operant conditioning, a dry term for a deeply human process, is the chisel, a behavior being agreeable, achieving a goal, suppressing a need is followed by a reward, praise, affection, a sense of belonging. The brain registers this as a successful survival strategy. Conversely, a behavior deemed unacceptable, setting a boundary, expressing a divergent opinion, failing, is met with a punishment, withdrawal of affection, criticism, shame. The brain learns to avoid these paths. Over years, this process creates a deeply grooved map of the permissible. One does not choose to follow this map. One simply walks the paths of least resistance, of least pain. The cage is the boundary of the map. The bars are reinforced by cognitive schemas, the core beliefs one holds about the self. In relation to the world, a child who is loved for their achievements but overlooked in their struggles may form the schema, I am only valuable when I am successful. Person whose emotional needs were dismissed may internalize the belief, my feelings are a burden. These are not conscious thoughts one argues with, they are the lenses through which reality is filtered. Every interaction, every decision is processed through this distorted glass. A request from a friend is not a request, it is a test of one's worthiness. A personal desire is not a desire, it is evidence of selfishness. The cage is not just around the person, it has been internalized, becoming the very structure of their perception. Social conformity provides the psychological mortar. Humans are tribal creatures. Our ancestors knew that exile from the group was a death sentence. This primal fear echoes in the modern psyche, translated into a terror of social rejection. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, does not distinguish between the threat of a saber-toothed tiger and the threat of a disapproving glance. It signals the same cascade of stress hormones. To act against the grain, to voice an unpopular thought, to live in a way that deviates from the norm triggers a biological alarm. The body itself becomes an enforcer of the cage, interpreting the tremble of authenticity as a life-threatening danger. The urge to conform, to blend in, to please, is not a character flaw. It is a deeply ingrained biological and psychological safety protocol. And so the self becomes a careful curator of its own prison. It learns to preempt disappointment by shaping itself to fit. It learns to silence the inner whisper before it can become a sound that might offend. It offers the parts of itself that are wanted and hides the parts that are not. This is an exhausting full-time occupation, a constant low-grade hum of vigilance runs in the background of the mind. Is this appropriate? Will this be liked? Am I doing it right? The energy required to maintain the facade is siphoned from the energy needed to build an authentic life. The person feels tired, not from doing, but from performing. They look at the open door of their own potential and feel not excitement, but a vertigo of fear. The cage, though invisible, is the most real thing in the world. It is the boundary of their being. For a long time, the arrangement holds. The performance is smooth, the applause is predictable, but deep within the carefully constructed self, a tremor begins. It is a faint, almost imperceptible vibration, a geological shift in the soul's core. At first, it can be mistaken for weariness, for a passing melancholy, but it persists. It is the authentic self, long buried under the architecture of approval, stirring in its sleep. This tremor is not the earthquake of rebellion. It is the first, quiet signal that something beneath the surface is still alive. This awakening often manifests as a peculiar dissonance. A person achieves a long sought goal, the promotion, the marriage, the public recognition, and instead of fulfillment, they are met with a hollow echo. The applause fades, and in the ensuing silence, a question hangs in the air, unspoken yet deafening. Is this it? The feeling is not of sadness, but of profound disorientation, as if they have been speaking someone else's lines in a play for so long they have forgotten their own voice. The tremor is the cognitive dissonance between the external narrative of success and the internal void, where meaning should reside. The things that were meant to be pillars of the self feel like stage props, convincing from a distance but hollow to the touch. The body, too, becomes a conduit for this inner conflict. The mind can rationalize, can spin stories of contentment, but the body keeps a more honest score. It speaks a language of symptoms, a tightness in the chest that appears not in moments of danger, but in moments of social obligation, a low-grade fatigue that coffee cannot touch, born from the endless energy expenditure of self-monitoring, headaches that bloom after a day of saying yes when the soul screamed no. These are not mere ailments, they are somatic protests. The body is refusing to cooperate with the charade any longer. It is the ground trembling, signaling that the foundation can no longer support the weight of the inauthentic life. Emotionally, the tremor feels like a civil war waged in whispers, a surge of resentment after doing a favor that was not done willingly, a sharp pang of grief for a path not taken, a passion abandoned to meet an expectation. This is followed immediately by a wave of guilt. How can I feel this way? I have so much. People are counting on me. The inner critic, the internalized voice of all those external architects, rises to condemn the stirrings of the true self as selfish, ungrateful, reckless. The conflict is paralyzing. To move toward the self feels like a betrayal of others. To stay put feels like a betrayal of the soul. This is the essential, agonizing friction of the awakening, the pain of being caught between two opposing truths, both of which feel real. Yet within this friction lies a sacred spark. The resentment is not a character flaw, it is a boundary misplaced and unexpressed trying to form. The grief is not self-pity, it is a testament to a loss that was never mourned, the loss of the self. The fatigue is not laziness, it is the soul's strike against a life of forced labor. These difficult emotions are not the enemy, they are messengers. They are the tremors sent from the core to the surface, carrying vital information. They are the map of where the self ends and the performance begins. To listen to them is not to indulge in self-absorption, it is to begin the delicate, courageous work of decoding one's own existence. The cage is beginning to feel the strain of the life growing within it. The tremors build a constant, low-frequency hum of dissonance. Then there is a moment. It is rarely loud or dramatic. It does not arrive with a clap of thunder or a flash of lightning. It is a quiet internal shift, so subtle it could almost be missed. It is the moment when the voice of the self, for so long a faint whisper in a hurricane of external noise, finally finds an echo within the cavern of one's own awareness. It is not that the voice is suddenly louder. It is that the listener, for the first time, has truly turned to hear. This is the moment of echo, the calibration of a new internal compass. It can happen in the most mundane of settings, staring at a spreadsheet, the numbers blurring into a gray haze, and a single clear sentence forming in the mind, unbidden. I cannot do this for the rest of my life. Or perhaps it is during a conversation, nodding along to a plan, expectation, and watching the words leave someone's mouth as if in slow motion, seeing them not as truth but as a request one has the right to deny. The moment is characterized by a sudden, startling clarity. The complex web of shoulds and musts seems to simplify into a single, stark binary. This is for me, or this is for them, and in that clean, sharp line, everything changes. This moment is a psychological event of profound significance. It is the activation of what some might call the observing self. This is the part of consciousness that can step back and watch the performance, the thoughts, the feelings, without being completely fused with them. It is the part that can notice the anxiety about disappointing a parent, and instead of being consumed by it, can simply note, ah, there is the old fear of Abandonment, this creates a critical space, a buffer zone between the stimulus of the world and the response of the individual. In that space, choice is born. Before the reaction was automatic, a perceived expectation would trigger an immediate compliance. Now there's a pause. In that pause resides freedom. The echo is not an instruction. It does not come with a 5-year plan. It is far more fundamental than that. It is a reorientation. It is the deeply felt, non-negotiable understanding that one's own inner state, one's peace, one's joy, one's sense of integrity is a valid and primary compass point. The question guiding one's life subtly shifts. It is no longer what will bring me approval, but rather what will bring me a sense of alignment, what feels true. This is not a selfish question, it is a structural one. It is the bedrock upon which an authentic life can be built, as opposed to the shifting sands of external validation. This moment is often followed not by immediate radical action, but by a strange and potent silence. The internal critic may be stunned into temporary quiet. The world continues its chatter, but it sounds distant, like a radio playing in another room. There is a feeling of being centered, of being grounded in a new and unshakable way. It is a fragile piece, to be sure, and one that will be tested, but the echo has been heard. The genie cannot be put back in the bottle. The self has spoken its name, and having heard it, one can never again quite pretend to be a stranger to oneself. The journey home has officially begun. The echo fades, leaving not silence, but a new kind of work. The realization has landed. But the life remains. The old architecture still stands, its hallways familiar, its rooms filled with the furniture of a former self. Now begins the patient, often clumsy process of renovation. This is not demolition, it is a careful reclamation. It is the slow, deliberate learning of a new language, the grammar of the soul. This grammar has no textbooks. Its rules are learned by feeling. Its primary syntax is the question, what is true for me? The first and most fundamental lesson is in the art of the boundary. For a person accustomed to a porous self, this feels not like building a wall, but like performing surgery. To say no to a request, to state a preference, to claim an hour of solitude is initially agonizing. It is accompanied by a symphony of guilt as the old neural pathways light up with alarm. But a boundary in this new language is not a rejection of others. It is an affirmation of the self. It is the structural beam that holds up the ceiling of one's own sanity. Each successfully held boundary, no matter how small, is a brick laid in the foundation of self-trust. It is a message sent to the deepest parts of the psyche. I will not abandon you to please another. This work is internal, a quiet audit of the mind. It involves catching the voice of the inner critic, the internalized architect in the act. You are being selfish. Who do you think you are? You will end up alone. In the past, these statements were accepted as truth. Now, they are held up to the light and examined. They are met not with combat, but with curiosity. Is that true, or is it just an old, fearful recording? This is the process of cognitive reframing. It is the meticulous work of translating the old, punishing language of the cage into the kinder, more accurate language of the self. Selfish becomes self. Honoring alone becomes available for a connection that does not require my diminishment. The soul's grammar is learned through its desires, no matter how trivial they seem. The yearning to walk in the woods instead of attending a networking event. The impulse to buy the brightly colored cushion instead of the beige one. The desire to spend a Sunday reading a novel instead of cleaning the house to a state of sterile perfection. These are not just whims, they are the soul's vocabulary. To honor a small desire is to practice for the larger ones. It is to build the muscle of choice. With each honored preference, the internal compass grows stronger, its needle settling more firmly on the pole of personal truth. This is a season of mourning, too. As one begins to live for oneself, there is a necessary grief for the old, pleasing self. That self was efficient. It knew how to navigate the world. It knew how to win love. Letting it go feels like losing a well-worn map. There is also the grief of disappointing others, of no longer being the person they expected and relied upon. This grief is not a sign of error, but of growth. It is the pain of a necessary Shedding the path to an authentic life is paved with the shattered expectations of others, and to walk it requires the courage to break a few hearts, beginning with one's own as it lets go of its old, people-pleasing shape. It is a slow, non-linear process. There are days of stunning clarity where choices feel clean and the path is bright, and there are days of regression where the old habits grip tightly and one finds themselves saying yes with a mouth that feels like a traitor. This is not failure, this is practice. It is the fumbling of a beginner learning a new instrument. The notes are sour at first, the rhythm is off, but with consistent practice, the hands remember, the music begins to flow, the grammar becomes second nature. The life, once built for an audience, is slowly, painstakingly being rebuilt for its sole rightful occupant. There is no final, triumphant curtain call, no moment where one arrives permanently and completely at the destination of the self. The journey of living for oneself is not a linear path with a finish line, but a gradual shifting of one's center of gravity. It is the slow, almost imperceptible process of moving in, of taking possession, of learning to inhabit the life that has always been waiting empty for its owner to return. The performance is over, the house lights have come up. What remains is not a stage, but a home. The most profound change is in the quality of the silence, the internal static of constant self-monitoring. The hum of "what do they think of me, am I doing it right?" has been dialed down. In its place is a different kind of quiet, a fertile silence. It is in this silence that one can finally hear the subtle cues of the body, the gentle nudges of intuition, the simple, unadorned truth of what brings a sense of peace on a random Tuesday afternoon. The energy once spent on managing external perceptions is now available for living. It is a great unclenching of the soul. Relationships undergo a fundamental transformation. Some, built entirely on the foundation of the old, pleasing self, will fade. This is not a tragedy, but a necessary clearing. The connections that remain, or the new ones that form, are of a different, sturdier kind. They are based not on neediness or performance, but on genuine recognition. You are seen not for what you can provide, but for who you are. There is a newfound capacity to love others more deeply, because that love is no longer a transaction designed to secure your own worth. It is a gift, freely given from a place of fullness. The world does not stop making its demands. The emails still arrive. The opinions of others still exist, but they land differently. They are no longer the central commands around which a life is organized. They are data points, suggestions, external events that happen around the self, not to it. There is a detachment, not of coldness, but of profound inner anchoring. A criticism may land and it may sting, but it does not shatter the foundation. An expectation may be presented, but it can be held, examined, and accepted or declined from a place of conscious choice, not automatic compliance. This is not a life of perpetual euphoric happiness. That is just another performance, another external standard to chase. Instead, it is a life of authenticity which contains within it the full spectrum of human emotion. There is joy, but it is a quieter, more grounded joy born from alignment rather than achievement. There is sadness, but it is a clean sadness felt fully and without the added layer of shame for feeling it. There is fear, but it is a fear that can be walked with, a companion on the path of growth rather than a jailer locking the door. The emotions are your own, they are real. To live for yourself is to finally become a resident of your own existence. You walk through the rooms of your life and know where the light falls at different hours of the day. You know which floorboard creaks. You arrange the furniture to your own taste. The life may be smaller or larger than the one you once curated for others. It is almost certainly different, but it is yours. You are no longer a ghost in the machine, a curator in the museum, an actor on the stage. You are present, you are here, and in the simple, unremarkable act of breathing in a life that is truly your own, you have found not a destination but a belonging. The long homecoming is complete.